Welcome to AP Biology. Today I want to go over linked genes with you, which is one of the tougher concepts I think that we do. So, genes that are located near each other on the same chromosome tend to be inherited together. So, for example, let's say this is the gene for freckles, and this is the gene for red hair. They're going to tend to be inherited together because they're so close. So, the only thing that would separate these genes out would be a crossover right here. But if genes are on different chromosomes, then they're not linked. So, for example, maybe this is the gene for whether or not you have freckles, and this is the gene for whether or not you have widow's peak. That's going to sort totally independently. So, for example, if you're heterozygous for linked genes, like let's say we talk about freckles, let's say you're heterozygous for that, and you would have homologous chromosomes like this, and one would be a big F and the other would be a little f. And let's say we're looking at red hair. So big R, little r is recessive. Um, we'll kind of look at it like this. So the big F and the little r are going to be inherited together, and the little f and the big R are going to be inherited together. You're not going to get the dominant ones together in this particular case unless there's a crossover. Whereas if you look at this, let's say there are this one has a homologous friend and that one has a homologous friend. Maybe you are also heterozygous for this big F, little f, right? You've got a little f here and a big F here, and then you have a big W there and maybe a little w there. So let's say that you're heterozygous for this. When you make your gametes, you might get a big F and a big W, or a big F and a little w. I don't know. Or you could have a little f and a big W, or a little f and a little w. So these are all of your possible gametes, and each of them are just as likely when you have genes that are not linked. But when you have linked genes, big F, big R, little r, looks kind of the same, but your big F and your little r are going to be linked together. You're going to inherit those together, and the little f, see the little f and the big R, those are going to be inherited together. So those are going to be called parental gametes. You usually are going to get those together. The only time you get a big F and a big R, or a little f and a little r, in this particular case, right, the one I drew out, is if you had some kind of recombination, a crossover right in between, right here. So these are going to be rare gametes, whereas these are going to be common gametes. So linked genes are when they are connected, they're close to each other on a chromosome. If you have genes that are on different chromosomes, they are not linked. If you have genes that are very far apart on one chromosome, chances are that you'll have a crossover somewhere in here. And we would say that those are also not linked. Don't mess this up with X-linked genes. X-linked genes just means any trait at all that's on the X chromosome, and that's different than linked genes. Linked genes are on any chromosome, the first pair, the second pair, the third pair, anywhere. Okay, so the frequency of crossing over is greater the further apart they are. So these two genes we would say are linked because the crossover frequency is going to be very, very low. You'd have to get a crossover right in here, which will happen, but not a lot. But if you look at this gene and this gene, wow, they're really far apart on the chromosome. So the chance of having a crossover here or here or here or here, 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 in any of those places is pretty common. Crossing over almost always occurs, just as likely to occur as not. You might have two crossovers. I don't know. So even though these two are on the same chromosome, they're just so far apart, we're going to say they're not linked.